And next we have our Meetup page, and we appreciate everybody that signed up through Meetup. And we always ask that you might give us a 5-star rating. You can see up here, we're doing almost 5 stars. We're at 4.5 right now. And we are over 1,100 members at this point. And next, our website DAALR. Let's see, now we go to our sponsors, it looks like. And we will start with Paul Ryan Construction with 35 years of combined construction experience. The exceptional team at Paul Ryan Construction has transformed residential and commercial properties by bringing a high-touch, customer-centric approach to every engagement. On the insurance side, Paul Ryan's reconstruction and roofing expertise is a skill that many insurance companies actively seek out. Their reliance on Hall Ryan's experience in helping them write estimates has made Hall Ryan a well-respected, trusted expert in the field. And next we have Brett Chakavis with Palm University. And Brett has put together a really nice program for the high-end 16-bed model. Also on his website is a great collection of training videos, mostly geared to the experienced operator. So you can navigate to palm.university to get more information about that. And next we have the RAL National Association, and we happen to have with us this evening the president of the RAL National Association, Brian Pinkowski. Brian, would you like to say a few words about the association?
Well, we have about 3,500 or so small assisted living places that are listed on our Find a Home thing. Membership is free, so if you're not part of the RAL National Association, you definitely should be. And there's a lot of good resources about important legal issues, important tips on what not to have your home be successful. In fact, one of the advisors is on with us tonight, Mr. Eddie McCracken. So if you have a chance to get his contact information from the chat and hook up with him later, you definitely should. And of course, we have a big convention this year, the RAL National Convention, which is going to be in Phoenix starting on October 3rd through the 5th. And so if you haven't gotten tickets about that, you definitely should. And Vern's probably going to say something about that here shortly. So thanks, Vern.
I actually just did a couple slides ago. All right, thank you, Brian. And so also the Residential Assisted Living Academy. If you are new to this industry, this is where we always try to direct you because they've got a very good program for teaching you the basics of it. I don't think we have anybody brand new, but if you are, we recommend you go to ralacademy.com. We also have a link to this on our website there. It's highlighted. And next we have Assisted Living Marketing, and Peter Reset happens to be here. Peter, would you like to say a few words?
Very few words. Thank you so much, Vern. Good to be here tonight. Yeah, we help out with your marketing. We can do your logo design and help you with business cards and print media as well, and get your website up to speed and doing what it needs to do and a whole bunch of other things. So we're super affordable. We've been working with assisted living for 15 years now. Know the space really well, and really passionate about helping you guys be successful. So if you need any help with that, let me know.
Thank you, Peter. I'll also throw in a little sidebar. Peter has built all of the websites for all of my businesses, and he does a great job. He's very responsive. So it's a pleasure working with him. And next we have the Senior Care Administrator Coaching. This is Janet Cornell. Janet provides consulting for your assisted living home here in Colorado. She can also provide the 40-hour administrative training, staff training, and employee file compliance and compliant documents. She'll also do a mock survey. So if you want to make sure that you are in compliance when you get visited by the state, you can have Janet come out and do a mock survey and tell you everything that needs to be corrected before the state shows up and starts writing those nasty little memos against you. And next we have the Investment Community of the Rockies, ICOR. ICOR is Colorado's only nationally recognized and award-winning real estate investors association. serving Denver Metro, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, and Northern Colorado, as well as real estate and rental property investors across the state. So you can go to their website, icorockies.com. And next we have Colorado's, although they're not just Colorado's, assisted living lawyers, Pinkowski Law, and Brian Pinkowski of the fabulous team of Brian and Michelle is here to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we represent a number of assisted living and group home owners around the nation. We're doing a lot of work right now in Arizona and California and Florida, as a matter of fact. Earlier in the year, there was a lot of Texas work, and as always, we have a number of Colorado clients. So we're very excited to keep helping the assisted living business. We're operators ourselves here in Colorado. We're excited about that. And if we can help you, let us know.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Vern.
Okay, and next, one of my favorite groups, us. This is the Better Way Funding, and we do lease options for group homes, not just assisted living, but also sober living homes and memory care and traumatic brain injury and anything that really falls under that umbrella of a group home. We can do lease options for, and if you're interested in our program, the outline of it is there at ralleaseoptions.com. Also, we have my business brokerage, which is Grand Avenue Business Brokers at A Better Way Realty. Over 30 years of business experience. I got started as an entrepreneur in '87. I've done over 60 assisted living transactions for over 100 million. We've got another 12 million on the plate right now. And I am a certified business intermediary, and I specialize, of course, in the assisted living space. And this slide's in the wrong spot, but vendor sponsorships are available if we have anybody who would like to be a vendor. And just talking a little bit about our recent activity, we still have available 89 beds in Eastern Colorado. That has 66% of the market in 6,000 square miles. So there's quite an opportunity there to kind of, I don't want to call it a monopoly, but control a good portion of the market. Under contract right now, expected to close in September. We've got 16 beds in the North Metro area. All of our investor opportunities have closed on these deals, 12 beds in northwest of Denver, and our big one in Scottsdale that we're closing next month as well. And we have another 8 beds under contract in the South Metro area and 12. This is actually one of our lease option clients that is exercising their option to buy. So they will be owning this property here at the end of September. And we closed on 56 beds in the Southeast Metro area, 46 in Northwest Denver, and 8 on the Western Slope in the last, I think it's been about 8 or 9 months. And next, the Colorado Assisted Living Association. And I think, Peter, are you still representing, or is it Brian?
That's going to be me.
Brian, you are a busy guy tonight, aren't you?
I am a busy guy. I'm committed to the industry. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, so we have a lot of things warming up here. We've been having planning sessions with our lobbyists to think about what we can do to improve things here in the state of Colorado for assisted living owners. One of the big things right now is some confusion that occurred from the helpful legislators of the state when they decided that some QMAPs had to have their certification approved by a certain point in time, but other QMAPs in other industries didn't have to have it at that same time. They had a different time. So as usual, some things don't quite match up in the law, and we're trying to help the legislators sort that out in the coming months. And then we'll see what other kind of things happen as we go forward through the year, planning for the legislative session.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Frank.
Appreciate all your input this evening, too. All right. So now on to the main event. And I want to introduce you to Serge Lupescu. And I've been following Serge on Facebook for a few years now and been really impressed with what he's done. And he is working on this hotel conversion that I thought, man, that's really intriguing. So I contacted Serge, and he was gracious enough to join us and express his thoughts on his project. So will you all give a round of applause to Serge Lepescu?
I'll give myself a round of applause as well. Thank you guys. No, I'm kidding. Nice to meet you all. It's a pleasure to see you all. Vern, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Of course, of course. Well, yeah, I know I was talking to Raj. I love hearing different projects and kind of where they're at in different stages. And I applaud everybody that takes something like this on and pursues it. You know, it's no easy task, as probably a lot of people who have done it realize after they're knee deep into it. So yeah, Vern, I'll let you kind of go ahead and segue into some questions and just see what we can do for everybody and hopefully provide some encouragement and insight into what to expect on a project like this.
So can you give us a little basics on what this property was and how you saw it becoming what it is now?
Yeah, of course. So it was actually being run as a hotel with travel lodge, and it was being independently run by a family, and they had run it for like 12 years, I believe. And so her husband had passed away during COVID. And so she was kind of at a point where she needed to offload it and try to recapitalize some of that capital and, put it into some more passive investments at that point. So when we originally toured it at the time down here in Arizona, we had just started getting into the behavioral space pretty heavily. And we were working with a operator who was going to ultimately lease it from us. And so he was already leasing another property and was expanding into the Tucson market. And when we had walked this property, a lot of the motel, hotel properties down there have exterior entrances. There's not anything all under one roof from an interior standpoint. So when we saw this, the layout was there and it had a ton of potential. The manager apartment was like a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, kind of small residential kitchen with like a little living room that was behind the check-in desk. So we're like, okay, that we can completely remove, meet all the requirements and regulations to be able to license it as a behavioral health residential facility. And so the first floor, the idea was to license that for 40 beds. And then the second level would have been used for more common area space. They would have utilized the rooms for beauty spa, game rooms, things like that. And so when we saw it, we're like, okay, we're going to get it at a pretty decent price point. And again, we did all the inspections, and as things kind of came along, which we'll touch on, but that was the original kind of mindset going into a property like this. Was it's going to become a licensed behavioral health residential facility that was going to service this operator, our tenants' needs for an outpatient clinic that he was in the middle in the process of licensing. And then we were ultimately going to provide more housing with other properties that we acquired down in Tucson. So this was just serving that vertical integration that he was implementing with his operations.
So can you touch a little bit on the behavioral health? Is that like mental illness, or is that is it different than mental illness?
Yeah, so a lot of the operators and providers in Arizona, really, they do a lot of substance abuse disorders and things of that sort. And so typically it's called SUD. So substance use disorder is what it stands for. And so with that comes kind of like a three-pronged approach where you have the outpatient clinic where they go and do their daily activities and check-ins and also any type of treatment that they need to do for where they're at in the process. And then the behavioral residential facility, which this hotel was going to be used for, was going to be more so for supervisory, but they were still going to provide some services there, but not medical services. It was like, hey, here are your pills, here's some meals, here's a place to stay during your 90-day period that you're in this program. So once they go through that period, they then get either not thrown out into the street, but they're typically moved out to sober living homes. And at those sober living homes, you know, they're being reimbursed by these outpatient clinics that have no interest in owning any of these locations or leasing any of these locations or dealing with the logistics of it. So they just kind of outsource it to these sober livings just to keep track of these patients that are coming in and out of their program. And so with the residential, it's kind of with the behavioral health residential, what we were doing with the hotel is the middle part of the program. That's where they're not necessarily through the whole program, they're still receiving services, but then once they're done, they're then moved to transitional housing or sober living. So with behavioral, that's typically a lot of the clientele is substance use disorder. It's not mental illnesses. There is psych units, you know, obviously that's more on the medical licensing standpoint. And that's where a lot of providers now have pivoted towards the inpatient model. And that does, you know, that takes care of the individuals who have schizophrenia, who are dealing with alcohol withdrawal, that type of stuff. So as far as what this facility was going to be used for, it wasn't going to be that intensive, but it did serve a purpose in providing services on kind of a high level standpoint for these clients.
So it's kind of between rehab and sober living.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. And who
It's all
pays?
part of a, like the 90-day program that each
Is it
client.
private pay or is it government? Government
A
pay?
lot of it is government funded. Yes. So what had happened at once we purchased this facility, this hotel in December of 2022 for 2.67 million. And lo and behold, you know, you plan for things, right? You're like, okay, poke holes in every deal you do. Anything you do, it's what could go wrong. And if the deal still makes sense, you know, move forward. So we poked holes in everything. We're like, okay, how do we address this issue if this were to happen? And what had happened, and a hole that we didn't anticipate, just like COVID for a lot of people, was it was about 4 months in. There was a lot of fraud that had been exposed in the behavioral space, specifically for what we were going to convert this facility for our operator and a lot of providers in that realm of what they were doing. A lot of fraud had happened and the federal government got involved. And it happened from the provider side. Sorry about that. It happened from the provider side. And then it also happened within the Medicaid billing standpoint as well in the state of Arizona. And so the government decided, let's just throw a blanket moratorium on the whole behavioral space, on every provider, everybody suspended, you know, until proven not guilty, essentially. And so that had happened in April, May of 2023. And our operator and our tenant was big enough to be able to float, you know, through the end of the year. Because all of his locations got affected. He had multiple outpatient clinics in Phoenix, through Flagstaff, and pretty much throughout Arizona. And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to have my lawyers try to fight this. I'm just going to try to, you know, do what I can to float through this process. And we were like, okay, you do that. We'll worry about the conversion. It's going to take us that long anyhow. Let's hope we get on the other side and everybody, you know, comes out of it unscathed. And that moratorium lasted a lot longer than what they said. So they said end of December 2023, we'll lift the moratorium. Everyone can go back to doing what they're doing as long as they weren't found with any deficiencies or anything that would suspend or revoke their license. Well, they extended it another 6 months. And then so that pushed it into 2024. And that was June of 2024 is what they pushed it to. Come June 2024, they're like, we're going to push it another 6 months. So, you know, it at that point, our tenant and our operator, I mean, he went belly up on a lot of locations, including this hotel that he was leasing from us. And that's something we just had to, we saw it coming. But then again, it was something we couldn't have anticipated when we purchased the building with the intention of what we were going to do. So
the moratorium, did they basically say we're not paying, or we're paying under certain circumstances, or we're not sending anybody there? What was
So how they approached it, which was very bizarre, but and this is where a lot of providers have their lawyers get involved in a lot of ways. So they pretty much just started going down the list and saying, all right, we're going to investigate each provider. As long as we don't find anything, you get removed off the suspension list. And so by the time it got to certain providers, and there were certain providers who did lawyer up and were able to kind of get moved up that list to obviously be found not guilty of anything and be removed from the suspension list. But yes, they did halt all reimbursement and billing for anybody that was on that list. And so really, there were a lot of providers that were able to kind of push themselves up that list quicker with their lawyers and being able to have the means to do so. But a lot of these providers, they weren't as big, right? And that's what our guy tried to do too. And they actually found him guilty of a lot of things. And so he eventually did get off the suspension list, but it was too late. I mean, by the time we could even remedy the situation, he was already behind on rent. It was one of those situations as landlords and having investors in a deal. You can't just sit around and twiddle your fingers for forever and just expect. And it was always kind of the same story. Hey, next week or by the end of this month, I'll have an answer. By then, this is when I'll be expecting billing to start coming through. It was kind of that whole ordeal. And so, yes, a lot of providers, they weren't, there's the suspension list continues to grow because they keep finding people who are guilty of things and getting back on the suspension list. And so, and now the update on everything is that September 15th, they are expected to either cut rates by half for all behavioral providers or keep it the same. That's going to be determined right now in about 2 weeks, give or take. So yeah, it's kind of put a lot of pressure on a lot of these providers who have big operations. And, if right now the average billing for a client is about $400 a day, so they're saying that's going to be cut to half, that's going to be very difficult. And that goes across the board for all services. So it's going to make it very difficult for a lot of these providers to, even on a large scale, to really keep their doors open. So really at this point, with our hotel conversion, I mean, we have a couple of different groups looking at it from different aspects, the non-for-profits serving migrants, government funding. City of Tucson has a big homelessness problem. They've been purchasing hotels and motels the last 2 to 3 years. So that's a source we're going to potentially sell this place is kind of the goal now. So
help me understand the business model. And even at $200 a day, $6,000 a month, that's a pretty good number. The expenses, I don't imagine that there's as much labor as there is in assisted living. Is that correct?
There is actually more labor involved, and
really?
especially one model can work, right? A lot of operators, they'll do just behavioral health residential facilities, and they won't have an outpatient clinic and they won't have a sober living. So sober living is more so a funnel to these providers, outpatient clinics, and their behavioral health residential, because you can't bill for sober living in the state of Arizona through Medicaid. That's more so either funded through the outpatient clinics who are subsidizing it, or it's being paid by the client on a weekly basis, which isn't very much. If you got a sober living for 10 beds, you're probably making $9,000 a month. The billing is, what they're paying privately every week is like $200 a week per individual. So that's not sustainable on its own, right? As a sober living. And then the behavioral health residential facility, the overhead and the payroll and even the employees you got to have on there is very similar to assisted living, but those reimbursement rates are I would have to go check what they are now, but they are anywhere from $200 to $300 a day for just behavioral health residential facilities and the services they could provide in that setting. a majority of the funding really was in the outpatient clinics. That's where they were able to really bill for a lot of more intensive type services. And so if those rates in those outpatient clinics get cut by half, that affects everybody. Because those outpatient clinics, like I said, are subsidizing a lot of these sober livings. These behavioral health residential facilities can't really send them to outpatient clinics now if they're not going to be serving a lot of these clients now because billing's cut in half. So it's made it very, it's gonna, if they do, which I don't, who knows? I mean, I guess we'll find out September 15th, but if they do cut those rates, there's gonna be a lot of blood in the behavioral space, to say the least.
Well, that's a pretty big number at the 400 a day. It's 12,000 a month.
Yeah.
They don't need, they're basically low acuity residents. Is that correct?
They are, but there's a lot of, with a lot of this treatment and with these individuals, there's a lot of care that goes into it in regards to where they're at in the program, right? Because it's a 90-day program. Every one of these clients, it's a high turnover in the space. So
Right.
you gotta have that pipeline full at any given time. And it really does ebb and flow really on the clients, right? And where they go. And the whole idea was, even with our tenant and our operator, he wanted to vertically integrate everything because we had bought housing in Tucson. We had bought the hotel to do to vertically integrate. So when clients did come through this program, they had a way better success rate, which in turn would help the state see his program as the go-to program, along with other providers that were doing similar models. It wouldn't have made sense to just do one model, either sober living or behavioral or outpatient clinics. And because again, you're not maximizing the billing in that standpoint. So yeah, it's a great model if the moratorium never happened, but it did happen because
Right.
the majority of the fraud that happened was within the Indian reservation. So what was happening, a lot of providers would go into the Indian reservation, collect all these IDs, collect all these information from these individuals, claim that they were receiving services at the clinic when they were actually not physically even there, right? A lot of these other individuals are getting paid to say that they were at the clinics when they never were. And so there was a lot of that kind of stuff happening, right? Because you can, like I said, you got to keep your pipeline full. And a lot of these providers realize, well, to keep our pipeline as full as possible and maximize as much as we can, how do we go and fill this pipeline up without actually filling it up? So
Wow. So what's the vacancy rate that they have to, or they would typically operate in with that turnover? 30% maybe?
well, you're saying before the moratorium?
Right.
No, it was, the vacancy rate was very low. Because there were a lot of there's a lot of individuals that need this, especially in Arizona. The amount of homelessness and people on alcohol withdrawals and the drug epidemic that's going on. The government was thinking they could just pump all this money into these programs and with all these providers to solve the solution. And if anything, it made it worse. It made a bunch of people they saw the money and they saw that they could just bill for all kinds and all sorts of services without actually ever providing them. And nothing ever was being resolved. There weren't a lot of solutions, and a lot of these clients were just relapsing and ending up in the same spot in 90 days. They go through the program, be sent out, and then relapse, end up back on the program again. And it was just kind of this revolving door that was happening. So the scary part is depending on once the moratorium is lifted, what new regulations are going to be implemented. There's talks that the Medicaid program for all behavioral services are going to be now done with private insurances. And then there's talks that to even become a provider is going to become a lot more difficult. Right now, an access ID, which is your Medicaid ID for a provider, they're trading for stupid amounts of money because no one can get approved for them right now. So the only way to really get billing is to get an access ID that's not suspended. And a lot of providers are willing to pay a lot of money for that. So
Sure.
I think it's gonna be interesting to see the aftermath right now, at least for the state of Arizona in the behavioral space. It could just be a higher barrier of entry, which again is just gonna be more bureaucracy and red tape for a lot of new providers. So I know that's a long-winded answer to this whole ordeal, but
And that's all right. Yeah, I probably took you off a tangent a little bit there. too. So let's talk about the property itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many units was it?
so it's 42 units. We ended up taking one of the bedrooms in the front area space and converted it into a privacy room and an office, which was required from a licensing standpoint to do. So we took a full bedroom, gutted it, removed the bathroom, and just split it and made it a privacy and an office. And then so that left it at 41 units at that point. 2 of the units we ended up having to do a complete gut of both the bathroom and the room and add a full ADA bathroom to both of those rooms. That was the minimum requirement for the amount of beds that we were going to get licensed for.
And is it hallways or is it like a courtyard style or?
Yeah, it's just one long like corridor down the middle.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
there's a corridor and then you have some common space that you put at the end of
the
it.
front area, correct. Yep.
I see.
And so, yeah, and then the previous owner had on the north side of the building, they ended up actually having a full parking lot that was never permitted. So the city made us tear that all up. And again, that was another thing that wasn't part of our budget, but we had to do in order to even do our C of O, which the C of O wasn't the difficult part, like doing the change to our C of O because it was already a commercial. We were just changing the occupancy to it and what the use case was going to be, which was fine. But yeah, there are just a lot of those types of things that came up that, again, we're like, okay, well, we have to do it or else we're not going to get our plans approved. So
Was the building sprinklered and does it need to be?
it was sprinklered already, and it does need to be. And so the one thing we had to do really, we moved the whole panel. We put a whole new panel in just because we had to redo all the sprinkler systems in the front area of the space where we did a majority of the demolition and the work. And so, and then we also had to interconnect all of the smoke detectors as well, in the building. So that was a whole electrical aspect that we had to factor in, for the building as well. And so, yes, that to answer your question, we did have to kind of redo a lot of that in the building, but it was already there. So it was just a matter of kind of moving some stuff around and putting some new things in. But yes,
Does it have an elevator?
no elevator. And it wasn't required to have an elevator just because we weren't going to license the or the second level. So the second level would have just remained kind of just additional bedrooms. And really the idea was that it was going to, the second level was going to be used for transitional housing for the rooms that weren't going to be converted into common area space. So with transitional housing at the time, they didn't have a lot of like regulations as far as licensing that. And so they were fine with saying, all right, we'll license or use the second level more for housing. And then the bottom level would be all for behavioral.
So was it like 20 rooms, first level, 20 rooms, top level, and they were gonna
Correct.
shared
Yeah.
bedrooms?
Yeah, each bedroom ranges anywhere from 250 square feet to 300 square feet. So really good sized rooms. And each room had its own bathroom. So it wasn't like there was going to be a lot of kind of shared bathrooms aside from the people that were each in their room. So the layout was great. I mean, it served the exact purpose that we had in mind. But again, it's like, as much as we like to say, like it was it was a great fit for what the use case was going to end up being, the moratorium just threw everything for a loop, and we have behavioral operators looking at it for transitional housing more than actually licensing it. And that, that's something that they're looking to do with it potentially. So we do have behavioral operators who are wanting to utilize it for that, but they're all waiting. They're all waiting to see what happens with this rate change right now, to see if it makes sense to add it to their operations. So
we're seeing in Colorado for a Medicaid room, if they come in and they check it out, they say, well, you gotta have a curtain that gives them privacy. And each resident in there needs to have a window as well. So I'm seeing, folks are basically splitting a window with a curtain to get each person their privacy and a window. Did you guys encounter anything like that with those rooms?
no, we didn't. We didn't have to do any of that with the behavioral space. So that's, and again, we have a lot of assisted livings too, and even in assisted living, that's not really required to put a curtain up or provide them a separate window or anything. Even now. So
we're only seeing it in the Medicaid space, private.
Okay. Yeah, and even Medicaid, we have a lot of operators, and we even with Medicaid, we're not seeing that either. So
Good.
that's little stuff that changes, right? As time goes on, it's like they want this little thing done, they want that done, and like we had a kind of a side topic, but we had a property, or we still have it in Glendale, Arizona, and they passed all these zoning regulations there from the fire department. And they came in and made us spend about $4,000 on just updating all the smoke detectors, making them all interconnected to the fire panel, adding all these additional interconnected lighting on the exterior, like all this stuff that ended up costing us, quite a bit to change. And we had no choice. It's like you have to do it, or else they, will remove your business license and not approve your zoning. And it's like,
they've done some silly stuff like that out here. Out here, you have to have your closet sprinkled. You have to have under the, where the porch is, if the porch has an overhang, that has to be sprinkled. And you have to either sprinkle the attic or put heat sensors in the attic.
Wow.
So it's, but even a little closet, that's this big, you got to have a sprinkle in it. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And that was, a majority of this hotel conversion, a lot of it, we learned a lot from doing this conversion. And it's something that anybody that our I wouldn't say a mistake, but one of the big things we should have really factored in, even though it had the bones and had a good layout, was the age of the building. It was a 50s building, and we were in for a rude awakening once we started tearing up some walls and doing some plumbing changes. And it's like everything just, we had leaks everywhere. We had to change out a main sewer line. There was all sorts of issues. And then for people, when they get, I would say for anybody that does, it's like, look, when you go in with an architect and an engineer team, and they're walking the property with you, and you're telling them your plans of what you're going to do on a conversion, they're trying to sell you on them too, right? So they're going to say, oh yeah, that would definitely fit there, or yes, that would work, right? Let's take some measurements, let's this and that. And you go to actually do it, and it's like, that was an issue we ran into. They came out, did all their measurements, whatever, and once we started getting in there, oh, this won't fit, that won't fit, we need to reconfigure this, we need to talk with our engineer about changing this low capacity on something, or even like the amount of space we had to work with was so confined that I think we spent months just trying to reconfigure it and get it just right to meet all the codes and requirements. And had we not had such a confined space, it would have been a lot easier to kind of just move things around. And that was one of the things that cost us a lot of money, was what a confined space we had to convert a commercial kitchen into, and everything else we wanted to do. And we had, from a licensing standpoint, a certain amount of square footage per individual that needed to be common area space. So it's like you're playing this kind of game of, all right, we only have this much space to do the commercial kitchen, but we have to allow this much space to do the dining area, because if we don't have enough common area space, we can't license for the amount of beds we want to license for. And would we have done things if the moratorium had happened and we could have gotten away with doing other things with that property? We probably would have done it, but we were so fixated with this one tenant, with this one operator, and meeting all those small little nuances that it, it costs a lot to do. It's funny when we walk the property with certain people, they're like, you guys put $1 million into this place? Why? How? Doesn't even look like $1 million worth of conversion. And it's what they don't see. It's all the stuff behind the walls. It's all the stuff in the ground, and it's, all the HVAC systems on the roof. Like, you're not going to see any of that. It's not all the great cosmetic stuff. It's all the stuff that ends up actually mattering, and it's behind all the walls, and it's almost like you have nothing to show for it in a way. So it's,
You had
yeah,
mentioned the plumbing being an issue. Were there galvanized pipes in that building?
yes, a lot of
So you had to rip out
Yeah.
all galvanized, and what'd you do? Use PTEX? Yeah.
I would have to go look back on what we used. Oh man, I would have to go back. I'd have to go back and see what we ended up putting in, but yeah, we had to change all the angle stops. All of that was, copper and iron all mixed together. They, every time there's something leaked, they just jerry rigged it and kind of just threw anything together to make it stop leaking. And
Right.
the whole second floor, it's like every other day something was leaking, and we're just like, okay, enough's enough. Let's just go in there, change them all. And it was $20,000 worth of work that needed to be done for that, for all the rooms on the second level.
And the wiring as well. I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, a lot of the wiring had to do more so with the fire panel and all these smoke detectors being interconnected. And then also all the panels were all out of, none of them were up to code. So we had to change a lot of the panels in the building. And then also because we were doing so much work in the front, and the way they had this property laid out, all the panels were in the back. And so they had to pull literally everything from the back to the front. And that was a lot of work. And on top of that, it was just, you practically changed all the electrical in the front area of the building. So we didn't really touch a lot throughout the rest of the building. It was all where we needed to do the work to meet all the licensing requirements. As far as like cosmetics, we changed out, and we did all new lighting throughout the corridors as well. We did a lot of that type of stuff to really spruce it up. But again, it was because of the way they had the building laid out, and we were doing all the work in the front, and it seemed everything to be in the back. And it was just a lot of it was a lot of work in that sense. So, and then we had, just like any conversion of this size, we had break-ins happen. We had subcontractors who were holding deposits, not delivering on the work, having to report them, stuff like that, that was kind of happening along the way, with also things being delayed. So on top of our operator dealing with the moratorium and never knowing what was going to come of that. So yeah, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, a lot of sleepless weeks, to say the least, but we
So
finally got
obviously-
it.
Obviously, you ended up over budget and over time, right? But what
Yeah, we were
percentage-
over budget. I want to say about 25%, give or take.
Okay.
Time wise, yes. And like I told you, Vern, we just had just bad luck in the regards of, like, right when we purchased and submitted all the plans to get our permits, City of Tucson changed their whole system. And like I said, everything got backlogged, and we got backlogged alongside that. So that took us, just for permits, it took us about 5 to 6 months. And that was really frustrating, because we're like, okay, why is it taking this long? And yeah, that was something that was out of our control as well, and it was like, okay. And our tenant was paying along, like he was paying up until June of this year. So it's like it's not like we were just not making any kind of, we were still making distributions to our investors. And that's another thing. We had investors on this deal. So it's like, you got to issue your distributions. You got to deal with that too. So fortunately, our tenant was paying, and unfortunately for him, he vacated the building now. And obviously at this point, all that money kind of,
Did he pay while you guys were doing rehab, or was there, you did the rehab and then he started paying?
so we had a rent abatement period. And again, he wasn't anticipating the moratorium either.
Right.
So he had a rent abatement period. And again, we were like, okay, we were told 6 to 8 months this project would be completed. Right. And no, that it took us 16 months to finish. So he started paying, I think we gave him, I want to say either 4 or 6 months. I would need to go back and look, but we gave him a rent payment period of that. We did, I think, like 50% after months like 4 through 6. And then after month 6, it was full rent. So, we tried to do what we could. And again, he wasn't anticipating the moratorium. He thought he could go ahead and subsidize it with his clinic that he was opening and licensing at that time, which he did end up licensing, but the moratorium kicked in right when he licensed it. So he was never even able to get billing up and going through his clinic.
Well, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can't always prepare for situations like that. I mean, that's just stuff that's so out of your control. And I would encourage other people. I mean, that's where I think a lot of having great partnerships, obviously, my partner, Jarrett, and having our capital raiser, and having just great investors who are, we do everything we can to keep the deal alive and to keep things moving forward as much as possible. So, having them and being able to talk every week and be able to strategize and figure out what the best route is moving forward. So, that I think that if there's anything out of partnerships, it's when things get hard is when you'll truly see what a partnership is made of, right? Just like marriage. I'm married for 3 years, so I'm still learning all of that. But it's when things get hard when you figure out, okay, is this person really going to stand by me, or is this all just going to go completely opposite of what I expected? So fortunately, we have, communication was huge, and it's being able to communicate that as transparently as possible. And our lenders, they were great too on this deal. So keeping them posted, they didn't know all the nuances of everything that was happening, because we just kept things afloat. We just kept, no matter what, we kept making it happen. And so we were making our mortgage, we were getting our investors their distros. We had to put a hold on this last quarter just because, again, the tenant vacated, and it was like, okay, let's just try to get things figured out moving forward now. So here we are today. I mean, the property's completed. We made it, but didn't turn out exactly how we had anticipated. So
Sure. Well, I want to open it up for questions from anybody. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll just call on you as you do. Anybody? Somebody's got to have some questions. All right.
Yes, okay, I'll ask a question.
All right, thanks.
Hi, thank you, Serge and Vern. Thank you very much for this presentation. So for the conversion part, would you say that like the turnaround took the 16 months you said because of the fact that there was different rules and regulations during the process?
that's a great question. No, so even though the moratorium got implemented, that didn't affect us still moving forward with the conversion. We were still able, like, we could go license this facility today if we chose to. The problem is, like, licensing was never halted. You can go do that, and we could go apply and get a license today, but there's just no billing source now. And because of the moratorium. And so even though the reason why it took really 16 months is because the first 6 months was permitting, and then it took about 6 months to really get to a point where it's like, okay, we finally have a way to fit everything into this confined space. We finally, all the architects and the engineers are on the same page along with our GC team. So that took about 6 months to get to that point. Obviously, you got holidays thrown in there, things getting delayed, parts, everything that comes with converting something. And as much as you try, we tried to push things as much as possible and try to get them to, and then halfway through, the superintendent we started with, that was on the project, ended up getting laid off, halfway through. So now you got a whole completely different person coming in, trying to relearn what this project needs. And you're trying to talk through them with, their boss. And that person ends up leaving 3 months later to a different project. And then our GC throws this other superintendent in, and it was kind of like starting all over again. And then, like what I told Vern, I'm like, if we could go back and do one big change, aside from obviously checking the side, the age of the building and doing probably a more thorough due diligence of all the plumbing and all of that, is really hiring a design team, and that being everybody that can have everything in-house with the architects and engineers, the design team, because if there's a change order that needs to be done, it can be done within an hour, 2 hours, rather than waiting 2-3 days for this other A&E team that we had used, which we shouldn't have done, but we did because we're like, oh, we'll save money. Well, that ended up actually costing us in the long run. And yeah, that's why it took 16 months, really. It didn't have anything to do much with the moratorium, because it didn't affect us having to convert anything, or, licensing didn't change anything. It was just more our operator not being able to stay afloat until the project was completed. So great question, though.
Oh, I see. Thank you for clarifying.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, Ed.
Hi there. Yeah, so I was just wondering, what do you see as your strategy going forward? Is it to still hang on to the facility, to another operator, to additional housing? Is it to sell it? What do you plan on doing with it now?
So yes, we actually listed it July 8th as a pocket listing with our current brokerage, Blueprint, to sell or lease. And so they're more of a national brokerage that specializes with behavioral operators and just really this whole space nationwide. So they work with a lot of REITs, a lot of groups like that. So it's been about 40 days now since they've had it as a pocket listing. And we just now went ahead and said, let's take it public. Let's just go ahead and list it, see what type of demand. And we're, I have a lot of great people in my network that I'm talking with as well. So we're open to both, either selling it and, obviously getting our investors' capital back, distributed, and, take our profits and most likely put it into another deal. And if we've been offered to do a lease option to purchase, with a potential operator as well, which they would want to execute within a year. But that's kind of our strategy moving forward as of right now. So.
Okay, yeah, good plan. So then, do you have other facilities? Do you have assisted living facilities in Arizona or elsewhere?
We do. We got 16 facilities in total right now. 9 out of those are assisted living, and then the majority of them are behavioral.
Okay. Okay, good. And then, so was that moratorium, was that a nationwide kind of thing, or was that just limited to Arizona?
It was limited to Arizona, yeah.
Was it? Okay.
It was state specific. So a lot of the fraud happened in the state of Arizona with a lot of the providers in Arizona. So
wow. And that didn't like open up the doors to spread to other states then, I guess, or?
It didn't, no, because every state's got their own Medicaid program. And they all access is what it's called here, Arizona's healthcare containment. It's a long acronym, but it's Arizona's specific Medicaid program out here. So yes, it was only for Arizona. And
Okay.
the federal government had to get involved because I believe it was $2 or $3 billion worth of fraud.
Wow.
So it wasn't chump change.
That is too bad that you got caught up in that, but
Yeah. No, I mean,
Gene,
no one saw it coming. They didn't even announce it. They just kind of, as soon as that happened, they just said, hey, moratorium's being in place, nothing you can do about it. So, and yeah, they've extended it to them this year pretty much. So, and I mean, it again, like there's still a lot of behavioral operators still being able to operate, right? A lot of them, once they got removed from the suspended list, they're
Mhm.
operating now. Like they're able to bill but like I said, once right now there's talks again that maybe there's going to be a rate cut for reimbursement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough deal to go through, but
Yeah. And that's something everyone should be cognizant of. It's like not always relying on one source of revenue, right? Not
Mhm.
being so fixated. Like if the government is like funding a lot of things, it's like even with non-for-profits, like if we have a non-for-profit come to us and say, hey, we want to lease your building, we're going to want reassurance from them. Like, okay, do you have a contract in hand
Mhm.
with the government saying, hey, you got funding for 5 years, whatever that lease looks like, if we were to go that route? Because again, you can't anticipate, we actually purchased a facility. It was being used for veterans, and they lost their funding. They couldn't, the government just said, hey, no more funding for the type of program that they were running. And we ended up buying that pre-foreclosure from them,
Mhm.
which ended up being a great deal for us. But yes, it's like you can't pigeonhole yourself into thinking the government's always going to be providing these types of reimbursements. So,
Yeah, that is true. Years ago, I was involved in deal. I can't remember the details of it, but I just remember it was a federal government lease, which was like for 25, 30 years. But in the fine print, there was an annual renewal that had to get approved.
yep.
And that just meant you don't have a 25 or 30-year lease. You got like a 1-year lease with options.
Yes.
Yeah. And
That's you got to be very careful with that. It's like, and that's their way to get out of it. It's like, hey, we couldn't get our renewal. Sorry, no more funding.
yeah.
But yes, you make a very good point. But yeah, great question. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Of course.
Christina,
Can I ask another question?
of course.
Serge, do you have your homes in California?
I do not. We were actually looking at a facility in California, in Kerman, California, and they have the ALW waiver program already, which is a great program for California. So yeah, we don't have anything. We've looked, and at first I was very opposed to expanding to California, but then they got a lot of great programs out here. But to my point, it's like you can't always rely on that. There's always going to be funding for those programs. So it's kind of a catch-22. It's like, it's great, but how long does that last? And will that always be around? Which I know with the ALW program, the whole idea is that it's going to keep a lot more seniors out of having to go to hospitals or, try to rely heavily on the government to supplement everything for them individually. Whereas if they could just be moved into a facility and qualify, it would keep them out of those big box facilities, burdening the hospital system, things like that. So I think that program would probably, I think a Medicaid program for assisted living is always going to be needed. And I think they have a way better system than what they were having with behavioral. I think with Arizona, the problem was there was a lot of people within the actual access system that was part of the problem too with the behavioral type services. So I think I don't want to throw like a blanket statement that don't ever utilize any of the government programs and funding. I run DD homes, so that's a very well run program in Arizona. So again, I'm like, worst case scenario, I could always just transition it into assisted living if I needed to, and just do private pay. But always have kind of a multi-strategy to anything you do. So yeah, I mean, great question though. But yeah, nothing yet in California. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it's just there's a lot more out here that I'm not a big fan of. Taxes, prices, just even politics, things like that, that I'm not a big fan of. Where I think Arizona and other states are very investor friendly. And there's still a lot of opportunities, I think, in states like Arizona and Texas, Florida, some of these more investor friendly states with probably less red tape than California. But again, you never know. I might come out here if the right opportunity, presents itself. So
So do you operate out of state or
no, none of our portfolios out of state as of right now. Every time we've tried to, it was just kind of like, we're not at Vern's level yet, but every time we try to go out of state, it's you gotta be cognizant of always being able to build up your database and build up your resources and contacts there. Because at the end of the day, as everybody knows in this business, it's all relationship based. And if you can rely on those relationships in whatever area you end up expanding to, it's going to save you a lot of time and headache. So it's just being able to build up those resources and, contacts. So,
oh nice. Yes, I'm actually interested in both DD and RAL as well.
yeah. Do you have anything currently, or what are you working
Not, not at the moment, but I am in the RAL Academy. I'm a platinum member, so I'm getting coached by them. One of them is on here, my coach Eddie. And then also, so I just got my administrator certification for both RCFE, which is RAL here in Cali,
Yeah.
and then also for adult residential facility.
Yeah. One thing for sure. I mean, my in-laws run facilities out here in Riverside County. One of their facilities is a regional center type facility. They got a contract with them. And so that's another great, thing to pursue, which I know pursuing stuff like that, they make it very difficult. But for a reason, because the reimbursements are significant for those types of clients, with regional and, DDDs and clients like that. And they purposely make it difficult just to weed people out. So, definitely pursue that and look into that once you get started. So,
Yes,
but that's
thank you so much.
of course.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we're pretty much at the end of our hour. Serge, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. That was very good stuff, and I think that everybody took a lot out of that. And
Awesome.
like any rehab, it has its challenges, and you certainly went through the ringer there.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to put it for sure. But again, it's if you're not willing to take risks like that, you can't. Again, there's nothing that could have prepared me or prepared us as a group for anything like that. No YouTube, no podcast, nothing. I think a lot of times in life, it's just you have to, when you set your mind on it, you got to really grit it out and really just say, hey, this is just where we're at. These are the challenges we have. And that's, we get paid to really find solutions to problems. And if you're not willing to put yourself through that situation, then it's probably better off you don't even do it. And again, I was fortunate, and a big, shout out to my partners and, the people that did help us get it over the finish line. And again, that's a huge thing too. Always when you set off on a journey like this or on a project like this, it's like have people there alongside you who are equally invested, equally aligned with you. And it's going to be difficult either way, but it does help to have those individuals that you can discuss things through and, iron things out and really help support you, you know. And so I think ultimately there'll be a great ending to this story. I'm sure if we end up selling it, you know, that will be a great solution, and you know, we end up kind of pulling all of our hard work out of it and all of our sweat equity and everything we've put into it, and ends up being a win-win, and we move forward onto the next deal. And the next deal, as you know, Vern, always has its own challenges, and every deal does. So no matter what you do, it's, you want to be challenged, you want to continue to see what lessons you have out of every situation. We definitely had a lot of mistakes that we turned into lessons out of this whole ordeal, and we'll, moving forward, that will only make us better, you know, and hopefully save us a lot more headache going down that path again if we choose to do it. So yeah, that's what I would have probably left to say for everybody. So
Good stuff. I think I'll take notes.
well, it's recorded, so everyone could go rewatch it. So
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to start a spreadsheet of all the lessons I learned from every deal.
probably not. Yeah, that spreadsheet's probably going to be endless. You might as well just put a whole book to it. So
Right. All right. Well, as we wrap this up, we always have a haves and wants at the end of the meeting. So anybody that has or wants anything from the group, now is your opportunity to express it. So reaching out to everyone here, does anybody have a have or want they want to express to the group? Blake.
How's it going? I'm Blake Crawford. I work for Assured Partner Senior Living. So we're a national insurance and risk management group. We insure close to 4,500 communities across the U.S. So I'm in Colorado, but we've got folks all across the country. But really have a group that specializes within the industry, have nurses, have administrators, have paralegals, have a legal team, have attorneys that all work for us that help our clients work through claims or contracts, things like that. So yeah, anybody has any things, to put my stuff in the chat. So I'd love to talk to anybody.
All right, thanks, Blake. And I'll just tell everybody Blake insures our portfolio. So they've done a great job for us.
Yeah, thanks, Vern.
You bet.
Thanks, George, also.
Christina, do you have a have or want?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention, I'm looking for deals. If anyone has or knows of anybody, I'm in California. I prefer my backyard, but if not, you know, it doesn't hurt to look at a deal anywhere.
All right, terrific.
Thank you very much. And I've also put my contact in the chat.
Wonderful. And I want to remind everybody down in the chat, I think there's a little file there. You click on a file and you can save. It's a text file, and you can save the whole text file and have it for the future. Okay, it doesn't look like Allison, but Allison has her hand up. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. This is Adam. We're together.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, Vern. By the way, I don't know if you remember me, but I saw you at the NatCon last year.
You look familiar, so
That's
I'll probably see you in October as well, I hope.
okay. So you can say hi, Allison, when we meet up. Yeah. So I'm always basically, it's my background is development and general contractor. So I'm looking to do some larger stuff. I have a pretty big pipeline. So I'm looking for capital partners who are able to commit at least $1 million. Ideally more like 5 to 10. So there's I got a whole series of things, anywhere from, you know, basically from like 50 units to 300 units.
Okay, and are you converting these to assisted living or?
These are all well, these are all ground up.
Okay, ground ups. And where are they located?
Basically Sacramento and Bay Area.
All right.
Yeah. All Northern California. I should just say it that way.
Great. Okay, Adam, thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Well, if nobody else has a have or want, then I'm going to leave the room, but we won't walk up the room. We leave it open until everybody's gone. You know, we never kick you out of that restaurant too soon. And thanks everybody for joining us. September, I don't think we're having a meeting because I'm going to be at the NIC conference, but we will be back in October. And I hope you guys can make it out to the Round Con in October as well. And again, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to download the chat.
Thank you.
You bet.